Life Happens is the podcast that is empowering people to build mental fitness and make positive changes to their everyday lives. Hi everyone, I'm James Gwinnett, endurance athlete and the marketing director of 87%, and it's my absolute pleasure to speak to inspirational people from the worlds of adventure, business, intelligence, sports, the military and more to get their take on life's ups and downs, the setbacks they've overcome, how they've dealt with failure, and what it means to them to build positive mental health. So let's get to it with this week's guests, who have set themselves the incredible challenge of beating a world record, not just any world record, mind, the record of rowing 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean. The current record for a three-woman team stands at 49 days, 13 hours and 49 minutes, and the We Are ExtraOARdinary team will try to break that when they take on the Talisker Whisky Atlantic Challenge later this year. I'm joined by two of the team members who I should add are already veterans of the ocean, having taken part in the famous Clipper Round the World race in 2017. That is a mere snapshot of their stories. I'm very excited to dig a little deeper. Welcome to Life Happens, Abby Johnston and Kat Cordoner.
Thank you for having us.
It is my absolute pleasure, ladies. Now, as you know, we are a mental health platform. The first question I ask all of our guests is, how are you?
Well, I'm a mixture of overwhelmed and excited at the moment, to be honest. Overwhelmed because I've gone back to work in a new job, which is much bigger. There's a lot of stuff going on, coupled with our challenge, which there is a huge mountain of stuff to get through, let alone, the training, but also super excited about both of those things. And kind of can't wait to really get to November when we have to kind of fly out to Gomera. So a mixture, overwhelmed and excited, I think, for me. What about you, Abby?
I love your honesty, Abby. Yeah.
Well, today I'd have to say I'm also feeling a bit overwhelmed. I've just had one of those days, just where was up early. I'm a rowing coach, so we had an early morning session. Handy being a rowing coach to row an ocean, but I had an early morning session, and then just everything seemed to go wrong. I work with teenage girls, and I don't know. I felt exasperated at the end of the day, but I've had a cup of tea, turned my music on really loud in the car on the way home, and here we are. But on the whole, pretty good. But today was just one of those days.
I like the fact. I don't like the fact. I appreciate the fact that you have had not a fantastic day. But was there a point this afternoon where you were able to just reflect for a couple of minutes on why it hadn't been a good day, and therefore put de-stressing actions into play? Loud music, like you say, in the car on the way home.
Yeah, I think for me, lots of it was external factors today that weren't within my control, and I let them really get to me. So there was a grumpy colleague, and some of the girls didn't quite do what we wanted them to do, and it was just these external factors that really got to me. And then I think I had a bit of a rant at my boss, and he was like, "Don't worry, I get it." And then I thought I sort of just took a step back, and I was like, "Okay, I couldn't control any of that. Just basically take a deep breath, go home. Tomorrow's another day." Yeah, I got to the end of the day and I thought, that just didn't go the way I wanted it to go, but tomorrow's a new day, so we'll start again.
But it's a good message in itself. It's a very productive way of looking at things. Having the opportunity to vent and communicate is incredibly important. Also, realizing what can be controlled and what can't, and accepting those. And as you say, you can't control what you can't control, and moving on.
Yeah,
so a very positive way of looking at it.
In rowing, we've always I've been rowing since I was young. We've always had this thing, and it's control the controllables. So obviously the flip of that is don't worry about the things you can't control. And I think it's probably something we'll be saying to each other a lot, Kat, on the boat when we get out there, and things are going wrong. Just control what you can control, and don't worry about the weather or what the other boats are doing or whatever. Control the controllables. So it was one of those days today.
Excellent. Let's come on to the rowing. You have thrown yourself into this monumental challenge of rowing an ocean. What was it about the Talisker race in particular that appealed? Why not climb a mountain or run a marathon across a desert, or, there's all of these different opportunities out there. What was it about the Atlantic Ocean?
Well, I've climbed some mountains and I've done a marathon. But I think why the Atlantic, I think Abby should answer first, because primarily the reason I actually originally, when we set about doing this, was because, as you mentioned, Abby and I we took part in the Clipper Around the World yacht race. And when we got to Seattle and we were going to be getting off, that was the end of the race for us, so to speak. A lot of people were talking about, well, after that experience, like, what next? Because surely nothing is going to feel as, amazing as what we've just done. And Abby said, I've always wanted to row the Atlantic. And I said, okay, I'm in. So that's how it started for me. The reasons now are slightly different, but maybe Abby can talk about why it was, something that she'd thought about doing for a very long time.
Well, I rowed competitively when I was at school. I rowed for Great Britain when I was younger, and I'd sort of, in terms of that side of things, like competition, ticked all of those boxes. Well, not all of them. I could have gone to the Olympics. Well, no, I couldn't, but that would have been the next thing to try and aim for. But I sort of ticked all of those boxes that I wanted to tick. And I'd just seen this ocean rowing race and I thought, oh, that scares me. No, thanks. And then sort of you have that thought, and then I don't know, why does it scare you? What is it that you can't do? Like, why can't you do that? Well, other people are doing it, and and then I think I sort of put it to the back of my mind. And then, like Kat said, we did the Clipper. And, there were some really scary bits in that. And there were points where, there was one stage where Kat can tell you about it, but up on the bows, we're in these 60-foot waves. We'd got someone with a broken hand and we'd destroyed sails and all of this. And in those moments when you're scared, you're like, well, actually, I can do it. Yeah. So, I can do it on a 70-foot boat with 20 people. Yeah. We can do it on a 23-foot boat with 3 people, right?
I love the fact that you get stories of sort of agreeing to do these things whilst slightly inebriated in the pub, don't you? You're sort of challenged by your mates. But I love that. I love the fact that you've done this, decided this off the back of another challenge.
I do think with the row, for me anyway, so I'm not a rower. I've never rowed. And I liked the idea of doing something where it's not a skill that I have. But I think what's really interesting about the row versus, say, the Clipper race is that, it's only us that's responsible for everything on that boat. If something breaks, it's us 3. On this race, on the Clipper race, we had, a professional skipper who, whatever happened, de facto, you could turn around, and they've probably been in this stuff before. But, for us, I think it's all of that. We're navigating now, we're fixing stuff, someone's ill, what do we do? Because actually that's 1/3 of your team potentially not able to row, or 2/3, or really unfortunate, we're all ill. But I love that kind of self-sufficiency angle to the race, which is very different from anything else I've ever done.
Sure. And I'm fascinated by your take on this sort of scary, exhilarating, coming off the back of another challenge, and particularly by your own concept of what's possible. Abby, in particular, you were just saying that, why can't I do this? And I do a lot of long distance running. I get a lot of people that tell me when I talk about it, their sort of immediate response is, I could never do that. And I find it very interesting that people are so quick to limit themselves, and you guys have said, no, there's no limits, we're going to take this on. What would you say to anyone that doubts their ability to take on a challenge? It doesn't have to be rowing the Atlantic, it could be a daily struggle. What would your message be?
Well, I spoke to somebody, I'm often at work, people say, I can't believe you're doing this, and to your point, they say, I could never do it. And I always answer the same thing. And it's like, you can. Now, whether you want to do it or not is a different story. But of course you can. I think, there's very few things that you can that limit your ability. And I think the mind is incredibly powerful in these things, because a lot of the time it's up here that says, that's reserved for people like X, they're the people that are going to be doing those kind of challenges. But I think, if you want to, it's totally possible. Like anything is really. And there's no magic, secret to it. It's about whether you really want to. And then if you do, then you just sort of have to crack on and work towards whatever it is that you want to do. I don't know what you think, Abby.
I think I had an interesting conversation with someone actually after we did Clipper, and she was a sailor, and she said, isn't it amazing how adaptable people are? So we'll sit at home behind our desks, or I'm a rowing coach, sit out on the water, and that becomes the norm, and my body isn't capable of doing something so far from that. But you put yourself, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean in freezing temperatures for 31 days, and of course you can do it. Well, and I think that's why so many people get to Seattle or wherever they got off the boat, or people that row an ocean or run endurance, races. They get to the end and they're then looking for something else because their perception of the norm has been so changed.
Your body is incredible. And, I'm just thinking back to heart surgery, and literally the day after, they were like, the physio came around and said, you've got to get out of bed. And I was just like, absolutely no way is that possible. Like, I mean, not for nothing, chest drains, you name it. I was in so much pain and agony. And they were like, you've got to get out of bed. It's important. You can't get pneumonia, whatever. And I said, it doesn't matter. We're going to take however long it takes, but we're going to get you out of bed. And I got out of bed. It was not comfortable, and I had to sit in a chair for a while. And every day they made me do the same until eventually you're obviously a bit better. But I think back to how awful that was at the time. It's a distant memory now, but actually, like, your body just does it. So I think to your comfortable point, Abby, I think we're also, sort of, I guess, shy of a bit of pain or a bit of uncomfortableness physically as well. It's not natural, we don't want to be hurting, but your body's ability to push through those situations, like on the boat when we're rowing and we've got blisters all over our hands and our bums and any other place we could possibly get them, which they don't advertise with the race, you will be able to just keep going, because you can. It's a bit of mind over matter in that respect.
You mentioned blisters. Talk me through some of the difficulties that you'll face on a boat for.
How long have you got, James?
Many.
Because honestly,
summarize them.
Crikey. Fatigue, obviously, maybe hallucinating because of tiredness, sleep deprivation, obviously, because you're consistently rowing. The sea salt, the sores, the salt wounds, etc. I mean, whether that's on the bum, anywhere that something rubs, the hands, are some of them. What else, Abby, do you think?
Capsizes. So there have been, a few capsizes in the last few races, and will always be clipped on. But obviously, in the middle of the night, finding yourself, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, I think is pretty hairy thought for everyone. Actually, on last year's races, they had a few marlin attacks. So where, marlins were fishing for fish around the boat, and their spike, marlins are the ones that put the big long spike, came through the boat, literally punched a hole in the boat. I mean, we have all of this training, like all of the worst case scenario type things. But, nobody had ever spoken to them about marlin attacks before. And then there were 4 on the last race. So that's now something we're thinking through as well. But yeah, I think that for me, probably the physical fatigue and just exhaustion will be, touch wood, we won't have a capsize and we won't have a marlin attack. And, there won't be a close shave with a ginormous tanker. But,
Yeah, I think it's that personal uncomfortableness, because those things there, like tiredness, hopefully we're working on getting our bodies into, a bulletproof state for the row. But, if you end up with an injury, but blisters and things like that on your hands, where actually like you need to use them to actually row and get you to the other end, I think that's the challenging thing, because it's how do you just kind of zone out on the fact that things are hurting whilst you're doing your 2-hour shift, and then your next 2-hour shift, and then do you get to the other end
for 49 days
before 49 days?
48.
So that I think that's going to be the difficulty.
This obviously, so it was a very open question. The problems that will be faced, there's countless. We'll come on to the training, as I do want to touch on this idea of comfort. You've been talking about it. I'm fascinated by this idea of putting ourselves through discomfort, because the perception is that we like to be cozy but I think actually it's human nature to want to experience a range of different emotions and sensations. For me, it's the reason that I do long distance running. But for normal people who aren't doing mad challenges, it's the reason that we watch sad movies and eat spicy food. And these things cause us, to an extent, emotional and physical pain. But there's something deep down that actually we get satisfaction and enjoyment out of coming through them, I believe. I'd be interested in your take on that.
Yeah, I think that's like totally it. And then I think that's the answer, is that, you appreciate at the end of it, how amazing your body has been, or how mentally resilient you have been, or all the things that you are capable of by doing it. It's a bit like COVID, how excited was everybody to get back to the pub when we're just taking the pub for granted, but it had been taken away from you. I just think your home comforts and all of those things, when they're gone out the window, you sort of get down to, well, it's just me and these oars, and then and pain and exhaustion and everything. And from what we've heard, the highs at the other end are like nothing else. Everybody said crossing that finish line, the flares photo is the grins on these people's faces. And I just think, like, I want that. I've been chasing that feeling my whole life, a 2K erg test, a race down a course. Like, I'm happy with the pain and all of that discomfort because I'm chasing that high. And
it makes coming back to normal life, I suppose, all that more satisfying because of the home, coming back to the home comforts. But then also, if you're going through a period of difficulty, if you can think to yourself, hang on a minute, I've rode the Atlantic, I can do this.
For Kat, it's going to be, when you were going through all your chemo and your radio and your, and it was grim, as you can explain it, not me, but I remember saying to you, like, God, rowing the ocean is going to be a doddle for you. This, like, getting 3,000 miles across the ocean is going to be nothing compared to what you've done. So,
Abby, I was going to say you're a rowing coach. Surely it'll be a doddle for you. I was going to come to Kat and training.
No,
you've stolen my thunder. We hadn't mentioned.
Sorry.
No, don't worry at all. Don't worry at all. We hadn't mentioned the chemo. A big question. And Kat, let's come to you. Is why, the big question, why you're taking on this incredible challenge. Perhaps you could share some of the things that you've gone through in the last couple of years and are still going through.
So I guess a short plotted history, I guess, in terms of what's happened in the last few years. So in March 2019, I was actually undergoing egg retrieval because I wanted to freeze eggs. And while they were doing that, they noticed something, took a biopsy, and basically found out it was cancer, which was a massive shock because, I do my regular cervical smear test. They all come back fine, nothing untoward. But unfortunately, it was a type of cancer that wouldn't have been picked up through that. So actually, I was lucky, fortuitous, that they found it when we were doing the egg freezing. So I actually underwent a radical hysterectomy. We kept my ovaries in, did some more egg freezing, then they had to take them out. And I was in remission for a period of time until actually during COVID. We were in lockdown in April, May, and I started to sort of get pains, and basically, long and short, it had come back. The difference is this time it's not curable. And so I embarked on chemo, which was chemo and immunotherapy every 3 weeks, and then underwent a period of 6 weeks of radiation daily, Monday to Friday. And then just to cap it off, because I'm super lucky, between the chemo and the rad, they noticed a mass in my heart on one of the scans. And it turned out I had a rare cardiac tumor called a myxoma, which is benign, but dangerous, because if it breaks off, can cause strokes and worse. So then after I finished radiation, I had that removed in February. So that's kind of, you know, soup to nuts, so to speak, for the last few years. And I think, you know, more so, and I did say at the beginning, you know, why the race? You know, it's because Abby suggested it and I said, fine. But I think now it's more, one, obviously there's the fundraising for 3 amazing charities, which, you know, are instrumental both for me and, you know, family and friends that have used them, particularly with Macmillan, but also just to show that, you know, like, I think sometimes when you've got cancer, you kind of quickly almost become like the person with cancer. And, you know, I'm super open about it, but it's kind of say like, yes, I'm going to be living with cancer. I'm in remission at the moment, but it doesn't change my long-term diagnosis. And I don't know, you know, I was told I have years, not decades. So it's really about, you know, fulfilling like the things that I want to do and proving that you can do it. You know, it's almost like that, putting the can in cancer. And as Abby will know, like, I was managing to train through chemo, but because of the heart tumor, I had to stop in November. So it's been a bit of a rocky road for me. I'm only back training now, but I still think, and I did wonder, had that moment, and I spoke to our trainer about it, Gus, and I was just like, you know, physically, do we think we can get to where I need to be for this row? Because I don't want to let the girls down. And he was like, oh, absolutely. Like, fine. And so I think there's an element of that, pushing yourself, but showing that you can do it.
Wow. I mean, I don't know where to start in response to all of that. I mean, Kat, what a your strength is remarkable. Such courage. One, to say, as Abby highlighted, to say all of that with a smile on your face. 2, to put yourself forward for, well, you'd already agreed to it, as you say, but I mean, it shows your incredible determination. Where do you think you get that from?
I think now more than ever, it's a question of like, just do stuff. There's no for me like, let's, you know, I'll worry about it next year or whatever, because I mean, we all have a finite period of time on this planet, and none of us actually know how long we've got. I have unfortunately been told that mine is not going to be, you know, living here till I'm 80. And I still, don't get me wrong, there's an element of I still live in hope that, you know, I may well be a very, you know, in that small 1% or whatever that maybe makes it. But I think, you know, there's no point putting my feet up, because, you know, time is finite, and I want to focus on doing stuff that makes me happy and brings me joy. And I think the determination, I think, is something. I grew up with 2 older brothers, and I used to hate that they could do stuff and I couldn't. So I was always like, okay, I want to be able to do that. I want to play that with them. I want to be able to run as fast as them. And, you know, I think that's still there in what I do, that kind of, and also within myself, that competitive nature to say, well, yeah, like, as Abby says, we see people that have done it, and it's just like, well, if they've done it, I want to be able to do it, you know. So I think it's a mixture of those things, really, that, you know, time is finite for us. me in particular. And also, like, if they can do it, why not?
It's a beautiful message, to focus on things that make you happy. A lot of people fail to find that purpose in life, that drive. People obviously have different definitions of success in inverted commas, but there's a famous phrase that success without happiness is in fact failure.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful message. So thank you. We'd like to talk about failures, setbacks. Perhaps Abby, I could come to you. Are you happy to divulge a failure, your biggest failure, a failure, and how you overcame it, whether that's in preparation for the challenge or otherwise?
Yeah, I think for me, probably I spent a lot of my 20s looking for like that dream career. And I think exactly what you've just said, success without happiness is a failure. And I think I was like, oh, I want to be in marketing and I can earn X amount of money doing this, or, oh, no, actually, I don't want to do this. And then I trained to be a teacher, and you know, it's not a major life failure. It's something that everybody goes through, looking for the right career and stuff. But I think I just had this thought that I had to be this or earn this amount of money, or I went to this school and everybody from this school does this. And I think I didn't waste time, because everything you do that's not for you is a learning block, right? Like you learn from it. And I knew after sitting in an office 14 hours a day, I was like, nope, that doesn't work. Okay, we'll go and we'll try a career in teaching, because I love working with kids. I was like, no, it's still not for me. And I think, you know, my dad said to me, Abby, you know, you can't just spend your whole life chasing rowing boats around the river. And I was like, oh, would that be me being a failure? If I'm a rowing coach and, you know, I've got a degree and I've got a PGCE, like to teach languages, and is that it? And then I think I just was like, no, do you know what? I just, being outside, being on the water, coaching rowing makes me really happy, and I love it. And I'm never going to make millions from it, and I'm, you know, whatever. But I think I just spent many years of my life thinking, oh, I can't do that because, you know, it's not a good job, or it's not whatever. And I think I probably spent too long trying to find something that maybe other people thought I should do, when actually I just wanted to be a rowing coach, and I love it. And
was that something that you had to teach yourself, to accept that actually what you had originally perceived as success wasn't in fact success, and that actually you had to, in a way, you had to fail at doing that in order to succeed at something else? Did you have to sort of go through a process in order to accept that?
Yeah, maybe. And I think it's still a work in progress. You know, some days, like, I come home and I'm just like, oh, really? Like, is this my, I don't know, aim in life? And or I don't know, I do question it, because, you know, when you see other people off going on super fancy holidays, or, you know, so much of social media and like the way we all live our lives now is everything's shared, and you see people buying expensive houses or nice cars or whatever. And I do sometimes just think like, oh, like, I'm not going to be able to do that. But then I wake up every day and go and do a job that I love. So it's, you know, even though today I, you know, kicked the cat when I got home and had my music on super loud, but I think it's a work in progress. And I think, you know, some days I come home and I think, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I did earn a shed load more money, and you know, I could buy a fancy car and go on a really nice holiday. But actually 9.9 times out of 10, I love my job. I love what I do. I love working with kids, and I love being outdoors, and I'm really lucky that I get to do that. So I think it's a work in progress. I'm not, you know, I think so much of it is just judging yourself on what other people do or have or think you should be, is just not you have to do what's right for you.
It's a very important message, and actually you haven't got it all figured out. You what you do does make you incredibly happy, but you appreciate that it's still a work in progress. You haven't reached that goal. There's still
and it's a compromise.
Let's have you both had a chance to play with the app?
I have.
Yeah.
Great, perfect. That helps my next question, because I'm going to segue from the happiness into mental fitness and using the app. What did you take from it?
I found, so when you do all the questions at the beginning, I found it really interesting that like how much feeds into your or the app's perception or our own perception of what mental fitness is, so much, like how you think you look in the mirror versus how much money you earn, what I was just talking about, or how happy you are with your job or your finances or your relationships. Like, I think, when you start going through it, I think it really, I was like, oh, actually, all of it feeds in, and just some things you don't think do. And then by asking the questions, and it said, you're thriving in this section. And I thought, oh, actually I am. And I'm really lucky that I'm thriving in that section. And, this section needs work. Cool. Well, that's a really good place on those days that I do feel like, crying. That's the section that you work on. So I thought it was like really interesting, just everything that fed in to that.
Did you have an idea of how, or did you think you had an idea of how mentally fit you were before going through the questions, and did the results differ to where you thought you were, or was your self-awareness is a element of this? Was it sort of on point, do you think?
Yeah, I think it was. I think what the score came out as is where I think I would put myself. If you'd asked me on the scale, I think it would have been pretty close, but I don't think I ever thought of all the factors that fed into it. I just thought like, oh, do you wake up in the morning feeling happy or sad? And that's not it. There's so much more to it, and I'd never factored that in. So I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah.
Kat, what about you?
So, I mean, similar to you, Abby, so I really loved the idea of kind of assessing. I mean, I'm a bit competitive as well. So I'm like, oh, how good am I at all these things? I was a bit nervous about doing it, if I'm honest, originally, when I was looking through it, because, emotionally, I am up and down, and I know I talk about a lot of this stuff with a smile on my face. I am, incredibly happy most of the time. But I mean, I have some horrendous days, when I am crying for most of it. So I was a bit nervous about doing it, mainly because I was like, oh God, what's this going to tell me? But actually, I was also surprised so to Abby's point around different things that impact you, that actually there are some really good areas where I'm like, oh yeah, actually, no, despite all of this, this is really good. And I love that, this is great in my life, or this is great. So it was, I guess, refreshing as well to see that, yes, going through, still processing, the sort of last year and 2 years in particular. But yeah, actually, there's so much, there's a lot of good stuff in my life, which, kind of, it doesn't probably bring me out at a thriving score like Abby maybe in some of the places, but does actually, bring you up to mentally being in a better state. And I think COVID has impacted that a lot for a lot of people, for that reason. When you think about relationships, seeing people, which for me brings me joy, like family, friends, being able to have a laugh with them, and being in company, having touch, all of those things which haven't been around, I think has impacted a lot of people, myself included. But then obviously recently with stuff opening up, I was super pumped about going out and seeing girls and being in the pub. But actually it wasn't even about the pub, it was just being with people. So I liked the assessment. I liked looking at kind of and thinking a bit more broadly about what does mental wellness, fitness mean, because I think you do think, oh, to Abby's point, I'm feeling sad, but actually when you reflect upon the different aspects of your life, I mean, thankfully, I was, super happy actually in a lot of it. Sure, not happy with my cancer diagnosis, but actually there's so much more. So it was quite refreshing in a way to see that.
There's a few buzzwords there that you've not deliberately, obviously, but that you've said that I can pull out. And one is that reflection.
Yeah.
And it's the process of thinking about thinking, and actually taking stock, taking time to. We all have good days and we all have bad days, provided you're mostly having good days. That obviously is a sign that you're mentally fit and positive. But it's the ability to appreciate that I'm having a bad day, like Abby did. Abby was saying earlier, and assess why that is important in helping us sort of drive through those circumstances.
Yeah. And I think, like with a lot of things as well, I think carving out some time to think about things. I mean, I'm also seeing a therapist, so there's a lot of self-reflection there, which is sometimes quite painful. But a lot of that is I get homework to go away and think about, when you're having these certain feelings, what is it that's driving it? Like I really suffer with imposter syndrome, and I have done for many years. And I think being out from medical leave has really kind of made it rear its head, incredibly so. And it's about thinking about, it's actually taking that time to sit down and go, why am I thinking that way? What kind of justifies that thought? What negates it? Like how, because I think you can very easily just let stuff take over. And I think reflection is important in so much of what we do. And we don't often give ourselves a lot of time because we're always so busy, aren't we, doing 8 million things. So yeah, it was nice to kind of use the app and just sort of reflect on, all of those different elements of life that make up our sort of mental fitness, and think about where we sit, within those areas.
Wonderful. And more broadly, I suppose, sport, exercise, what would you say about the power of those two to help overcome mental barriers?
Well, I mean, for me, unbelievable. I think, I've always loved exercise anyway. I've always been sporty, but I have to admit, through my biggest challenge going through treatment was not being able to exercise while I was having radiotherapy, because it really, I think both it gave me energy when I was having chemo, despite obviously being tired, but it does give energy. And it's also just that sort of time to, I don't know, nothing's really going through your head much for me when I'm exercising anyway. It's like I'm just, I'm lifting this or I'm doing that. And it just really, and I used to train before I went and sat in a chair for 10 odd hours. And it was incredible. And I noticed the difference the minute that I couldn't exercise. And then even going back in the last 2 weeks, already my mood is just so much better for it. So for me, like it's key. And it doesn't have to be lifting weights, even if it's walking. I mean, seeing daylight. I work in an office, albeit at home. So, I am sat at a chair, which, Abby would die if she was doing. I don't particularly warm to being sat in a chair either, but, seeing daylight and getting out and moving, which is what our bodies are made for, I think it has a radical shift change in my, both my mental state and just happiness. I don't know about you, Abby.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just about getting out and being active. And then I find that filters into every other part of my life as well. So if I can take some time to get out and go for a run or sit on the rowing machine or do some weights, I just find that it then, filters into every other part of my life. And I'm a bit more proactive in my job, or I'm a bit more, I don't know, it just sort of,
more energy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's good discipline as well, isn't it? Good discipline, good routine, good energy, good positivity, good feed, good everything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a rowing coach, so I really couldn't sing exercise as praises enough, really.
Let's come on to there's a few questions I ask all our guests. Abby, I'm going to come to you first. Is there anything that is an absolute non-negotiable that you do regularly to help your mindset or improve your mood?
Well, exercise probably. But actually, I think the other thing is I just call my mum and talk about it. You know, just literally, she lives on the other side of the world, and I call her most days. She lives in New Zealand, and well, like my parents do, and I just call her and just talk about it. And, you know, sometimes just ringing up and saying, I feel really crap, and talking about it with someone just, you know, lightens the load. And so if I can't exercise, I'll call my mum.
Lovely. I love that you have that, obviously a very strong relationship with your mum. Kat, what makes you good at what you do?
I think my emotional intelligence. So, you know, I end up what I call herding cats at work a lot of the time. So a lot of time spent with people. So I think emotional intelligence. And I think the other side of it is that I'm just super happy-go-lucky normally, like a bit of a motivational kind of person. So, you know, whenever you're in a crap situation, I'm normally like, how can we make this more fun? And I think it's important that you have fun in what you do. And that for me works at both work and in any of the challenges. So I think they're the two things that make me good.
Fantastic. No, that's great. Abby, what would you say to a young Abby?
Oh, I don't know, because I don't have it figured out yet. But I think it would just be to almost like live your own life. Don't compare yourself by anybody else's standards. You have to do what makes you happy, and that'll be the right thing.
Kat, any ideas, people, things, places, books, etc., that you have taken inspiration from recently?
It sounds a bit contrived, but the inspiration that I genuinely get is actually from everyday people that I bump into. You know, whether it's a girl that I work with and have become friendly with as well, who has had cancer since she was 18 months old. And over the years, it's destroyed her body in various forms, the treatment, etc. And she's now going through treatment still, and still works like an absolute boss. So she slays it in the office, and she's got 4 kids, and she's still smiling as well. And I just sit there and I'm like, you are a complete legend. Or, you know, people where I've volunteered with, and you see they devote a lot of their time to volunteering to help others. And I just think that's incredible. So it's really for me, it's the people around you that you meet. And I just think that a lot of it's to do with selflessness as well. Like, I think that to me is hugely motivational. The number of people that donate their time and effort for others, you know, sometimes at their own expense. Like, that's what I find truly motivational.
Inspiration from the everyday. I love that. It's right there in front of us. And if people would like to get in touch, follow you on social media, you obviously after support for the race. How do they do that? So
our Instagram, our social media is We Are ExtraOARdinary, but extraordinary is spelt OAR. Get it? The pun, or so We Are ExtraOARdinary. And that's our website's the same. And, you know, we've got GoFundMe's and Virgin charity pages and stuff. People can donate. And so We Are ExtraOARdinary.
Ladies, I am going to wrap things up there. It is absolutely remarkable to speak to you. You are taking on such an incredible challenge, and you are doing it. Well, there's a bit of anticipation and a bit of worry perhaps there floating around, but I think the smiles and the acceptance that this is going to be an adventure rather than a horrible, grueling challenge. The fact that you're so positive about it, particularly Kat, in light of your difficulties. I think it's absolutely incredible. But I also love that you're so in check with your emotions. You've said that you cry, but at the same time you're mostly positive, and it just seems like you're having the absolute time of your lives. I'm very much looking forward to keeping track of progress, and we'll wish you the absolute best of luck for the challenge.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about you, but I was blown away by the positivity of that conversation, especially given Kat's situation. Her strength in the face of adversity is nothing but inspiring, and it's a strong message to us all to strive to get as much as we can from life. What I find amazing too is these women aren't professional adventurers or world-renowned explorers. They just have a dream and the mindset to go after it. There's nothing holding us back except ourselves. As always, if you enjoyed the interview, please like it, share it, and subscribe to the 87% YouTube channel, and look out for the next episode of Life Happens coming soon.